Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Brashay here at Cosmic Gateway. I am joined once again with Jeff Krisman, and we are bringing you episode 3 of Synergistic Conversation. So, welcome, Jeff. Thank you for
Oh,
being.
thanks so much, Alicia. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you.
I just enjoy our conversations, and of course, we don't really plan these. We just kind of take whatever's been relevant, what we've gone through, what we've experienced throughout the week, and kind of dissect it and talk about it. So, you know, I always feel that if I'm going through it and you're going through it, then we must all be going through it at some level, and just, create a platform that creates a level of normality or normalization, I should say, for us going through this, very extreme times in various different ways, and to feel not so crazy and maybe give some context around it, at least from my own vantage point and what I've learned over the years working with energy and obviously from your vantage point too, Jeff, with all your background, with all your spiritual teachings and everything that you've delved down, and it's great to come in it and look at things from a different perspective. So where do we begin? Because we were talking about timeline jumping and all sorts of stuff, but I might get you to start because you were explaining to me something that you went through over the last few days, and how that impacted you, and how um, you were sort of reflecting on that process. So you do want to start us off?
Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate this, Alicia. I was going to, and I definitely want to give the short version of this and not get so wrapped up in the story of it. But I guess the short version, with me, I realize the short version is anyway.
You're like
Can be
me.
challenging.
I always say the short version, 30 minutes later.
Yes.
Detail-oriented
Yeah, it was.
people.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. It was very interesting. Thursday evening, for whatever reason, I started finding myself, and even probably that afternoon, I started feeling very dense and just very heavy, so to speak. And I found myself just kind of emotionally feeling really out of sorts. And there was really, what's weird is, and this, although this is usually the way it is for me in a lot of cases when these energetic shifts happen, that there is no, there's nothing going on necessarily that I can point to and say, I feel this way because of this or that. But what happened was I found myself feeling just like getting really severely triggered, and it was shocking to me how it just came up out of the blue. And I found myself just in my everyday interactions with people in my life and that I work with, there were certain things that triggered me, and I found myself getting incredibly angry. And as someone who usually, I would say that I tend to have what they call a very long fuse, or I tend to be fairly long suffering. I will, usually not really get upset very easily, but this was like things were just, and it just like the anger just exploded. And I found myself being really irritated with people and frustrated and like no patience at all. And I knew, thankfully, I guess the one thing I will say is that after being on this path, and from what I've learned from you and from other people, that I at least the one good thing is that I no longer think that there's quote unquote something wrong with me. I just know that there's something energetically changing or shifting, and I may not understand it rationally, but I felt like that's what was going on, or I intuited that. And there was really nothing I could do other than just ride it out. And I was going to say that I didn't really plan to say that this morning. I didn't plan to say much of this, but there was really nothing I could do to make it better. And it's almost like what I'd refer to this is, it was like I was trying to cope with not being able to cope. It was literally feeling like I can't cope at all. And what I found was pretty quickly that, I would start thinking about how I'm going to cope. And the more I tried to think about it, the more I was not able to do it. And so I went to sleep, Thursday night, feeling really badly about myself and just feeling really kind of lost and confused. But I knew this is what happens sometimes. And so I woke up Friday morning and admittedly, had a fairly busy day, but I felt completely unable to do the things that I really needed to do. And so admittedly, the only thing I could do was try to do the most important things. And I know that's difficult, especially for people who, in my case, I work from home. So I've got a little bit of flexibility, but there's still things that have to be done.
Yeah.
But I realize it's a whole lot different if I would have had to go somewhere and face other people and show up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a couple of Zoom meetings, things like that, which were very difficult and painful to do. But I just tried to do the best that I could. But I really didn't know what all this was about. And then what's really weird is that I had a local arts organization that I do some interviews for on one of my podcasts. And I had started this about a year and a half ago and was really, really excited at the time and thought it was going to lead to all kinds of things. And there's been some good things that have come out of it. But one of the things I guess that I had hoped for, and I realized this is what happens when you hope for things, it did not. I was really hoping to get really involved with their team and get more involved personally in what they're doing. And none of that came to pass. And I remember at the time, thinking that, somehow or wishing that it would. And what's weird is that I had a long period where I didn't communicate with anyone from this organization. I would just do these interviews. They would send me people to interview and I would do them, and that was all fine. But what I realized was I was supposed to meet with their executive director on Friday. And it was so weird because I couldn't figure out why. I really did not want to meet with her. I did not want to talk with her. And I really don't know her. And so I was trying to figure out what was the resistance, and I really wasn't upset with her about anything. She hadn't done anything to upset me or offend me. And what I realized afterwards was that this timeline had already collapsed. It was already done. Yeah. And I love the saying is, I hope it's okay. I was going to say, I don't know if this is something, if you want me to,
No,
I wrote
you
it
said
down
because I can't even remember it.
it was so perfect. And you were saying that something that does not resonate will eventually disintegrate.
Yeah.
And that was so perfect. It's been a long time since I've literally you said that. And I was like, hold on a minute. I've got to write it down. And I'm so glad. That was just perfect. And that's really what it felt like. There was no resonance any further. And what I realized was my mind, some idea, if there is any idea of who I think I am and what I'm supposed to be doing, I would think that I would definitely welcome that opportunity to have that conversation. But my heart and my spirit, soul, whatever we want to call it, knew that there was my business with her was done. There was no, and it wasn't anything personal, but it was just, the thing is though, that disharmony between the mind and the spirit. And so for some reason, I just paid attention to that. And, there were some feelings of confusion and guilt, but then all of a sudden the clouds parted, so to speak. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is what's happening now in this energetic climate that we're living in. These things are, and so I think I may have even said to you earlier that, I don't know, this timeline may have never actually began. And to me, that's I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I feel like that may even be a further part of this shift. Is it possible that we are going to, sense or think that certain timelines are beginning when in fact they never actually do, and they never actually did? Yeah, really, really, really strange. So I'm beginning to realize now that I know if I live with the mind and my idea of what my life is and what I'm doing, this is going to be very difficult, to say the least, and kind of challenging and confusing. But I'm finding that if I can leave my mind out of it and just be with the energy of what's going on. But I realize that's a lot easier said. I was going to ask you, is that easier said than done?
It takes practice. It takes time to allow yourself to operate from a whole different way. And, we have our set parameters of how we live and experience life through linear ways, through mind. And then when we start to incorporate, these concepts of timelines and, jumping timelines, the mind can't really that's so funny. Sorry, I've got so many things going on in my head right now.
Oh yeah.
The mind can't comprehend it, but when you break it down and share that experience just then, that's a tangible way to break down and explain a timeline shift. So I'm so glad that you shared, and I'm just going to dissect that bit by bit because there were so many things that you said. I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And of course, this is purely from my own experience and my own perspective. So with everything, discernment, if it resonates, take it. If it doesn't, and I'm saying this to you, and I'm saying this to people watching, Um, but the first thing that, so we'll go back. So the first thing that you experienced was this heaviness feeling of anger. And then it was outwardly projected to people and things in your life, and you couldn't really do anything to control it. And there was no context around it. So when you look at that, just from that perspective, I always say through the ascension process, we have to depersonalize everything, because everything is energy. And as energy moves through us, it's a process that's running through, it's an energy that's running through us in that moment. And that emotional energy could be sadness, anger, rage, disappointment, disillusionment, whatever, or it could be a fusion of all of them. And so because we're feeling that, the first thing that our mind wants to do is rationalize, why am I feeling this way? So then we try and pinpoint it in our life, when it's not actually that. It's just an energy that is running through us. And generally those processes, generally speaking, will last for 12, 24, 48 hours, and then they will pass. That energy could be clearing out a timeline that was connected to this time or other timelines. And sometimes if we're not aware of it, there's this whole other thing that could be going on. And I spoke to you off camera before, we were talking about anger and rage. And, when neither of us identify as being people who outwardly express anger or rage, we're quite calm, peaceful people. And I was saying to Jeff, I'm like, and I've said this on other videos too, I don't really, but when it runs through me, it's a really scary process for myself and for the people around me. And I don't even identify with that person. And I used to suppress it. And then I realized you can't do that, because it affects your physical health and you get sick, and that's not good, So I learned to work with it and not suppress it, but express it in safe ways. And so quite often what I would do is take myself away from people and go through that process alone, because I don't want to impose that on other people. But as I said to you, it's like an ancient rage that runs through me, that I've worked back to where that, I always say, working with timelines is more than just this lifetime. It can be parallel lives, it can be past lives, it can be future lives, it can be ancestral. There's so many different, when you're looking at energy strands. So it's really trying to connect in with that emotion and energy strand to go back to the original point of creation, of wherever that disturbance in the field began. And as you do that, then you can work on dismantling it, disintegrating it, integrating it, and bringing that purification back into the present moment. So that's one component, right?
Yeah.
I hope I'm not losing people here.
No, I mean, for me, this is really resonating. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll give an example. For me, the ancient rage that stirs up with me is generally around, and this is quite topical at the moment. It's come up in the last 3 videos I've done, I think. Ancient civilizations that have fallen. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of old souls who are on this planet have experienced the demise of, Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, ancient Sumeria, like all those sort of civilizations, and they all fell. There was, catastrophic reasons why they fell. And sometimes there's rage around that because something went wrong and there were people connected to us and we oversaw something that we couldn't do. Sometimes there's deep suffering and grief. Like, I can't even look back into Lemuria without absolutely losing it, hysterically crying. I still can't get visuals on it because my soul memory has been blocked because it's so traumatic. So I've had to work with the energy of it and not the visuals of it, because it's not really in any highest good for anyone for me to revisit that from a visual perspective. So I've worked really hard just to clear the energy around it, but I don't actually have any visual concept of what actually took place there. I have ideas, but I have ideas. But the ancient rage for me really stems back to, it's always gone back to Egypt. You know, there was, I think there was high timelines in Egypt where there was a real thriving, ancient mystery school teachings, ascension teachings, a lot of beautiful magic that was worked, and it was corrupted. And a lot of us witnessed this beauty that we had built with loving intention to be hijacked and corrupted, and to see it sort of used in inverted ways. And for me personally, on a soul level, that still brings up really ancient rage. So,
wow.
So when I can tie it back to where does that come from within me, that's always where I go back to. And so I've actually attempted for years coming at it from different angles to help, like what we call 0 point, or bring that back into a space of neutrality where there's no polarization of emotional charge to it, and to bring forgiveness and acceptance and understanding and higher perspective and love back into that. So, I mean, that's just an example. So quite often what happens is when we go through those energetic processes, I speak on this from a very conscious perspective, but it took me years to understand what was going on. I spent many years in the dark of like, very similar to what you experienced. I'm like, what? But I'm one of those people that I have to know. It's like, if I know what's going on, I can deal with anything. If I'm in the dark about it, that's where I kind of feel like I lose control, which I have to laugh about that. We're going to laugh at ourselves, because are we really ever in control?
Absolutely, yeah.
But generally, then what occurs once we go through that energetic process, it's like the life force can feel taken out of us. We can feel very tired, very lethargic, and not being able to function in our physical day-to-day tasks. And I see it as an emptying out process. So it's almost like that stored energy that has collapsed or disintegrated or diffused, then it is taken out, and we're that a little lighter in our vessel, in our body, in an energetic field. But we're still in a process. And I always find that with timeline collapsing, there will be a period of around 24 hours, 48 hours, 3 days, up to 3 days. It used to be 3-day period turnaround for me. Now it's a much quicker process, I've noticed, where there's this almost forced inaction. It's like nothing that we can do really works. And it's like anything, even the smallest task is like pushing uphill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That part used to really get me going. Until I got told that when you're in those spaces, any unnecessary action only feeds energy back into those timelines that are in the process of disintegrating.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah. And as soon as I got that message, that changed everything. I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit here on the couch, find some reruns of whatever, and I'm just going to wade this process out, or I'm going to put on some music, or I'm just going to go sit. I've been known to go and sit in nature. I mean, depending on weather dependent, of course, but like if it's been nicer weather, I've literally taken myself out for 8 hours and just sat on the grass in a park and just like wade through that process. It's really about finding what works for you in that moment, that you can sit in that stillness. In the wintertime, I've been known just to sit and stare at walls for hours on end.
Wow. I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I can't remember the words you used, Jeff. What was it? The cope without cope.
Yeah. In other words,
Say,
coping with not being able to cope,
thank you,
being able to
thank you.
somehow. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's finding ways and strategies to cope. Finding ways to cope when you're not coping, because in those moments, there is a lot that's falling away, and it feels very uncomfortable.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I guess that's part one. Part two, so the emptying out, the disintegration, the high emotion that comes with it, or the heavy emotion that comes with it, the emptiness of nothing really kind of happening. And then generally then that process then comes into a completion, and then that's when we start to notice things drop away in our life, and you mentioned that experience and the things that drop away can be people, things, relationships, connections, jobs, opportunities, home, like on a physical level, where what has actually happened is your energy has changed, your frequency has changed. So what was in resonance with that project, with that organization, you're now a mismatch, and it's going to eject you out of it. So you're going to feel repelled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the mind, the human aspect of it is like, what went wrong? Why don't I feel why
Yeah.
don't I feel connected anymore? Like, this is something that I was my everything, and now, and that once again is another conflicting and confronting process. And once again, it's that depersonalization and learning and understanding that it's no longer in resonance anymore, and it isn't anything. We can try and create stories in our mind of, oh, maybe it was da 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 da, or maybe that person's really evil, or it's not. 9 times out of 10, it's not the case. It's
Yeah.
just purely that there's no longer a resonance. And so that's kind of like a overview of how I view timeline shifting from an energetic standpoint. And you were talking about, like, did that timeline ever exist? Like, was it, this and I mean, that could be a concept. I'm going to go and sit and explore that, because I love someone throwing a question at me, and then, like, I'll go away and try and find the answers. But what
Love
does come
that.
to mind when you said that was quite often on the ascension path, we have a lot of what I call false starts. And those false starts are generally around projects, collaborations, friendships, connections, where we are completely guided in one direction to do something. And we can actually, for those of us who have that perception of seeing into or feeling, it doesn't matter, but that we feel into that possibility. And I think it's not even about having expectations. It's beyond that, because it's a feeling. It's certainly a guidance and an excitement. And so we go into these, and we go into them, and then they don't sort of come or land in full fruition of how we had felt into it, or visualized, or wanted, or however it looks. And I think that quite often we are guided into those things more for the process of it rather than the outcome. So, for example, and I'm not saying this is factual, but I'm just going to give hypothetical example. It could be that there was some experiences of soul contracts that you had to go through with some of them to, come.
Interesting.
That could be one. The second one could be that maybe that whole project has to go through a recalibration to come into a different vibration, and then it will rejoin again, and it will take
Huh.
It,
Interesting.
it could be that you just needed to get certain skills or interact or meet or make connections to then go off and do another thing that then will link into that in some way down the track.
Interesting.
And we don't
Yeah.
really know, but they're just possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
But the false start thing is I mean, I've been through it so many times. Like, this is the thing I'm doing. And then,
This is
months
it.
later, it just
Yeah.
disintegrates because it no longer, resonates in my frequency field. And sometimes it can just be lessons, and I see this a lot in relationships and partnerships and sacred relationships. I talk a lot about spiral relationships where we meet people at certain frequencies for experiences that only that person can give us. Once those lessons are learned, that relationship disintegrates. Where
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, that was my very long-winded, but that was my dissecting of your experience over the weekend.
Yeah, that's perfect, and I really appreciate this because one of the things I love what you were talking about when you were talking about following in your own experiences of going back to prior lifetimes about following the energy and not the visuals, and so that really stayed with me. And now what I'm wondering is this maybe what makes this so difficult for people, myself included, myself included, that because of the fact that if I'm not following the energy, if I'm so busy living my life in here and with my mind and with all of my ideas about what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, that and what this all means, and if I'm literally making decisions based on what I am thinking is happening or what should be happening, then I'm not really following the energy at all. And I really wonder, is it possible that at this stage in human I'm trying to think what the word is, human development, or I can't remember. I know there's some word for this. It's just not coming to me. Human evolution. Is it possible that maybe we used to be able to follow energy more, and with the advent of language and complex thinking systems and all of the things that we equate with modern life, have we actually moved away
Yeah.
from the ability to be able to follow the energy? Is almost as if have we somehow up until the point at which ascension, until people became aware of this, had we actually gone in the opposite direction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with all of the thinking and the logic and the rationalizations of things, and
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different variant um uh, perspectives on the true human history path, the path of Earth. Um, and once again, like, I come back to this thing of, like, maybe there's not necessarily a absolute right or wrong, because I'll give for an example. Some people believe that Lemuria existed 13,000 years ago. Other people believe that it existed 75,000 years ago. That's a big difference, right?
yeah,
That's a big
yeah,
difference. Um, and depending on, which school of thought you read from, there's going to be variant differences. And I won't say the title of the book, but I very strongly resonate with Lemuria. I believe that was my first incarnation on Earth.
oh
And it was a
wow,
very beautiful one, and it has a lot of significance to my lifetime now. And I have my own feelings into Lemuria, and also I've read few bits here and there over the years. Some really resonates, and when it resonates because your body responds to that. You'll have chills going through your body, or you'll what I call truth tears. You'll just burst into tears because you know that that's true within your soul. And then other times you read, you're like, what? And and I ran a retreat going back a couple of months ago, and it was very much based on new Lemurian codes coming into the planet, which I know I hold those keys, as many of us do. And it was activating it at a very specific geographical point to bring that energy and frequency back on the planet. And um, about a week before I went up there, I was like, I should really read, you know, get back into like connecting with like Lemurian civilization. It's been a while, just a refresh. And I kept getting this recommendation to get this Kindle book about Lemuria. And I had like 3 recommended, and I was like, okay, like I follow the signs, right? Okay. And funnily enough, I went to go and click on it and I said I could get a free version. I was like, oh,
Mm.
perfect.
Oh yeah.
And I read the first 2 chapters, and it really, really resonated. And I was like, it put so much in context as to specific colors that I work with and different things that I had done for many years, and I didn't know where it came from. And I realized that was a very Lemurian thing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I kept reading into the book and I was like, yeah, no. Yeah, and it became a bit of a joke on the on the retreat, because we kind of joked about some of the things that were written in that book that just did not resonate. And I said, but who am I to say that that's wrong? You know, that just may be a different experience or a different timeline on Lemuria that I didn't personally experience. Just because it doesn't resonate doesn't mean that it's not true and didn't, you know, exist somewhere on the multiverse. And so that's the sort of my take on it, you know, that where everyone, you know, people want to get into arguments that, you know, Atlantis was like this and da da da. It's like we've all had our different experiences, and who's to say that there's not different timeline versions of that, you know? So I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah.
But you know, talking about timelines again, but that's what I was getting at. So I believe that during the time of Lemuria, Earth was in a fifth dimensional consciousness and energy, and it was primarily um, more feminine. Um, and so people lived on that civilization that were very in tune with nature. They were very in tune with their emotions. They were very in tune with their um, psychic senses. They used telepathy. They worked with energies, and um, yeah, and after Lemuria sunk, and then we go to Atlantis, we go to Egypt. Um, we became more masculine oriented, more
Mm.
left side brain, and those things of working with our right side of the brain and our intuition kind of got uh, I'm trying to think what the word is, but it had been pushed out of us as a civilization in the dissension process of the planet. And so now what is happening is Earth's going back up into a resonance frequency of fifth dimensional consciousness, and you know, we're creating that society as we go along. And that's why a lot of Lemurians have come back for this time, because we know what it's like to exist in a society where all that is nurtured and held in reverence, and how we lived in that way in peace and harmony. And so but also bringing in the balance of the intellect as well. So it's not going back to how it was, it's recreating it, you know, with all that we've learned in the dissension process, and having a highly masculine oriented civilization, and finding that equilibrium and the beauty in both, because that's ultimately the most powerful thing, you know, because, you
Yeah.
know, Lemuria, some of the flaws in Lemuria, because it was experimental. It was seeded. But once again, what I'm sharing right now is my own perception from my own soul's experience. So it may differ from other people's understanding of Lemuria, and that's okay. But Lemuria was seeded by a lot of our star family, the Pleiadians, Arcturians, the Lyrans, the Syrians, all these different beings, star brothers and sisters. And Lemuria was created, as some people would call, like the Garden of Eden. You know, it was a very peaceful place, and it was a place where we could experience physical bodies and experiencing a physical capacity, yet still connected to source, still remembering who we are. And the problem was that when they came into the physical bodies, we didn't like the density of it. And so Lemurians
Huh.
spent a lot of time out traveling in the cosmos in their light bodies and not actually in the physical body. So a lot of us Lemurians still have to overcome that. And I know that's been a big part of my journey, is becoming comfortable in the human experience and the physical body. And this ascension this time around is to have a very different experience, to be fully physically integrated into our physical bodies with our light bodies, and not picking and choosing when, okay, I'm in the physical body, oh, I don't like this, boom, I'm going to go out in my energy body and explore the cosmos. We're learning how to slowly as a society, as each one of us sort of taps into this multi-dimensional aspect, but then to be able to transcend the physical limitations, to be able to do things like teleportation, levitation, bilocation. That's where I truly believe that we're heading as a society, as we move beyond through this shift.
Thank you so much. That was just like that was a perfect, what I call big picture about what this is all about. And I mean, and all of that resonates. It was just kind of like, as you were saying those things, it was just, things were just, it was literally, it was like I was lit up almost energetically, because I feel like that is just a perfect way of summarizing. And I realize there's a lot to this, but yet that really resonates so much, because and as you were speaking that, I was feeling it. It was kind of like energetically, it was resonating. And I mean, and obviously what you were speaking on a human level was certainly speaking to me as well. And yet I'm having both of those experiences at the same time, and being able to, and I wonder if maybe that's what this is about as humans, being able to tap into, being more tuned into the energy of what we're hearing and what people are sharing. That
Yeah.
if I can somehow be more tuned into that and not completely tuned into hearing you, with my brain or my mind, or the mind, but I guess being able to, and I know different people say that the mind also includes the body. So maybe I should be saying the word brain instead.
Yeah.
That I'm just hearing you with what they call the rational brain. I use the rational in quotation marks. And I was going to tell you, I had and I don't know if this dovetails with this. I had a really interesting experience yesterday. I have some friends here locally that actually do what I kind of refer to it as new earth music. And this one particular friend of mine, I mean, this is kind of what it looks to, or feels like to me, not looks, but he basically plays a guitar, but it's just like energy comes through him, and it's never the same way twice. I mean, he's not trying to play what we would commonly refer to as music, but it's energy. And so we were talking a few weeks ago about, it would be really interesting if he were to do this, but we were not together, like we didn't have a gathering. Basically, we had an agreed upon time yesterday, and all of us were, basically not together. And he was going to play he didn't even say how long. And what's so weird about this is, I was going to tell you that I had the most interesting experience, because the first thing I found myself doing, which I think is very human, is that I was imagining him doing this. In other words, he's at his house, I'm here. And so I'm trying to visualize, what he's doing. And then at some point I felt like I received this guidance to forget about trying to visualize it, forget about trying to think about what's going on, and just listen.
Yeah.
And what's so weird about it is that, when I think about, telepathy, for instance, and communicating with people at a distance, I realize what's gotten in the way. I don't know. I still don't know if I can do that, but I know for sure what's gotten in my way is my ideas about what that is. And what's so weird is that there were some energetic experiences that I had, but it was very primitive. But it was not, it had nothing to do with what my idea of, if in fact we were communicating at a distance. It was so much less dramatic than what
Yeah.
I would have thought, like what you see in the movies, or, what we think of. And yet it felt very true. I mean, it was definitely resonating here.
Yeah.
But it just made me realize, here's what I'm wondering now is it possible that when you talk about dissension, that we've gone so far the other way for so long that I almost felt like a 1-year-old trying to walk. It's, in other words, trying to pick up on that energy. I kind of felt like I was crawling and falling and, yeah, but I wonder if maybe that's just part of what, and I don't want to say this in a way of self-deprecating or saying that there's something wrong with me, but I really wonder if that experience I had yesterday is kind of a signal of, the fact that this is something that's almost, we're having to relearn.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think I love the fact that you bring that up, because I like to simplify things. And throughout all my teachings, I've realized that a lot of it is perception, because people perceive that telepathy is one way, or clairvoyance is one way, or whatever is one way, because of what they have seen someone else do, because what they've seen in the movies. And if they're not having that exact experience, then they're not doing it, or they can't get it, or it's not, happening. And I always like to sit back and like ask people, well, how, and find out how they experience it, and get them to realize that they've actually been doing it all along. I think that we all have the capacity to be clairvoyant and psychic and use all those senses. It's our human birthright. It's stored within our own DNA. And it's, sometimes it takes practice and perseverance and dedication to self-mastery and the path of spiritual enlightenment. But with intention and practice, we all can access these things, and understanding what it looks like from our own experience is important. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
like learning to ride a bike. It's like learning to walk again. Our souls have done this before, but not in this way. And that's where it's leading into uncharted territory, every day. We've used these abilities and we've done all that, but then we've come into this lifetime and forgotten it. So it's about rediscovering and re-remembering, and then reutilizing these gifts and abilities, and then mastering them again. But the good thing is that once you've mastered something once, whether it be in this lifetime or another, it comes back really easily and quickly. And I think that's what we're realizing now with so many people, what I would coin coming online, and going through really abrupt awakening. So you see people who are like, I've been in, the spiritual path for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and in the dedication and practice. And I bow down to that, because, it takes a lot of perseverance and practice to attain certain levels. But what we're seeing now with the energetic climate that's happening on the planet is that it's pushing this process at a much accelerated rate. So, I'm seeing people and clients that went through an abrupt awakening 6-12 months ago and have the capacity to do things that I can do, that I've been mastering over, 20 years. And that
Wow.
excites me. I don't get,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just showing the level of human evolution that's happening at an accelerated rate, which is amazing.
Wow. Yeah, and what's so interesting to me too is I feel like there, some of these ancient practices from the East, for instance, I find it really interesting that right now, not as someone, I mean, that was kind of my entree into the spiritual life, was I started practicing mindfulness, 30 years ago, because I just wanted to stop struggling from depression. And it really helped. But what I didn't realize was, and now I'm starting to, that's why I'm going to share this with you. I'm wondering, and I realize now, for instance, mindfulness is a huge thing, and it's all about, promoting, which is great. It does help people achieve this sense of calm and peacefulness and perspective and some headspace to be able to kind of not be completely taken over by what they're thinking about, what we're feeling. But now I'm wondering, is the point of this, are we capable of so much more than just being calm? Now I'm wondering, is the next level of this, I can see where a practices like this and Qigong, for instance, and Tai Chi, and there's all these ancient practices of working with energy. and I realize a lot of it is just to be calm and to kind of have something that's a kind of a break from modern life and the hectic pace of what we're doing. I'm wondering if this puts us into a space where we can be more. And I'm wondering if these people who did these ancient practices many years ago in the East, if they were aware of this, that somehow the idea was to get ourselves in a place where we could actually work with the energy, and we could actually be in a space where we could be more tuned into that. And I'm just wondering if maybe that is something that is not, we're not really as a collective, if we're just, starting to realize this. And I'm open to being completely wrong. I mean, I don't know
No, I
if
think
if this
you're
makes sense.
100% right. 100% right. I think, and you look at a lot of Eastern philosophy and practices, you know, ancient mysticism and energy work is so ingrained in that. And like you hear of all these amazing stories that come out of the East of monks levitating and flying and,
Yeah.
bilocating and doing all these things that we would consider in a 3D reality to be miraculous or superhuman. But I think that's the new normal that we're moving into, for sure. I'm trying to think of who's that guy, that author, Lobsam Rampa. The books written by Sam Rampa. I
Oh,
haven't I
yeah.
haven't read them personally, but my dad has and has relayed so many stories, and that comes to mind. That was actually my dad's sort of wake up and introduction back in the 70s. He read those books
Wow.
and he was like, wow. And he was talking about underground tunnels. And talking about these monks that were just levitating and all these, there's so much information in those books. So it was pretty out there for that, for those times. But yeah, I think we're moving back into it, and I think there's a lot of secrets in the East that, I mean, they talk about the lost years of Jesus, that I think it was like 8, and that he was
Yeah.
out in the East, learning with the gurus and, I can't think of the word, the the sages out there. So
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
helped him prepare for him to go through his crucifixion and ascension is actually what he went through. Modern day religion has glorified that and sort of skews it all, and
Yeah.
well, we won't go down there, but when you look at the story about Jesus, he was someone who went through that process of death and resurrection and entered into his light body. But what we're actually going through now as a human race is we're going through that ascension process of integrating our light body without having to go through the physical death process.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That really resonates. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm wondering too, if maybe, what we call miraculous or miracles really ends up just being just seeing things from a different level of consciousness.
That's it. Yeah.
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 Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've always said that the ascension process really starts with the mind first. Well, with our consciousness. When I say mind, I refer to it as the lower and higher mind. So the lower
Yeah.
mind refers to like a third dimensional consciousness. Higher mind is higher consciousness, or logical brain, as opposed to abstract thinking. And I always say that the process, as I've seen it, is that it starts with the awareness or consciousness first, that sort of streams into us. Um, and so we will be planted with the seeds of concepts and ideas. And generally, what happens is it can happen two ways. There can be a resonance there, and then that seed is planted. Then we start to understand the concept, and then we start to embody that, and then be able to witness or experience these things. Or the other thing that can happen, depending on how heavily we are programmed into the matrix system, is that we can go through a process what is called cognitive dissonance, where we reject it and say, no, that's not possible.
Yeah.
And programming is very strong. You know, I don't take for granted that I was brought up in a family that very much nurtured anything and everything as possible. You know, there was nothing sort of two-way out there. Whereas that's not a common thing. You know, we're bred into a society that from a very early age, all these things are stamped out of us. And we go into a very indoctrinated education system that teaches us to obey, to conform, to
Yeah.
look at things from a very linear physical perspective. And so when you're indoctrinated into these programs and systems, that's where we struggle with the cognitive dissonance, when we are given new information that completely defies what we have been taught. And you know, that you know, it's one of two ways. I often, when I give people information when it comes through in a session, quite often I'm just relaying the information that comes through. I sometimes don't even understand it or have, you know, context around it myself. But I'll always say to people, your human mind may not understand this, but your higher self and your soul does. That's the aspect that I'm talking to, and it will take a while for it to permeate through into you. And that's when, on the flip side of it, when you can hear information, whereas your mind may not be able to comprehend it, but there's something in your body that screams, yes, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just being able to hear that,
Mm,
it seems to me like I would use the word miraculous for that, even on a
yeah.
certain level, isn't it? For people, I mean, it's miraculous to hear that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, wow, we've really gone down some tangents, haven't we?
Wow.
Mm. I, I'm conscious of time, and once again, you know, just amazing for Jeff to get up at an extraordinarily early time to record
Oh,
these
it's
videos.
wonderful. Yeah.
But I was just wondering if we finish off with a bit of a guided process that I'll take
Yeah.
you through, and then obviously
Yeah.
viewers at
Absolutely.
home can do, tying it all the way back into what we started with, is taking a feeling of an energy and going back to the original point and zero pointing it. How do you feel about
Yeah. I love that.
that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, get comfortable. If you're listening at home, get comfortable. So, do you want to go with the experience that you had on Thursday night?
Yeah. That would be great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So for those watching at home, maybe think about something that perhaps you've recently gone through that brought up a trigger or a very heightened emotion, and sort of bring that into your awareness now. Okay. So closing, yeah, beautiful. Closing your eyes and just allowing yourself just to take a couple of deep breaths. Just breathing in and gently exhale. Breathing in and out. And I want you to bring back or recreate in your mind, in your energy field, that feeling, that emotion, that experience. When you've been able to reconnect, yeah, just let me know. Okay. So what I want you to do now is I want you to scan your body. So you may almost visualize like a light that's scanning from head down to your feet and then back up again. Just scanning your body. And I want you to feel into or see into scanning where is that feeling in your body right now?
Oh, are you wanting me to tell you that?
Sure,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Only if
Oh
you
yeah.
want to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Just
really weird. It's like it's in my head.
okay.
Yeah, it's like in the upper part of, kind of like what you'd refer to, the like maybe the between the third eye and the head.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like this pressure. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to connect with that energy, whether it's just the feeling of it, the sensation, maybe the visualization of it. Yeah. Okay. And what I want you to do is visualize an energy cord that goes from that goes out into the universe, the multiverse. And I want you to follow that, whether it's a feeling, sensation, a visual, tracing that energetic tether or line all the way back to the beginning of creation, of where the original point started of that feeling. As you follow it back, it'll get to an end point. And just really trust whatever's coming through to you. It can be very abstract. That's okay. And I want you to ask the question, where did this originate? In this lifetime, other lifetimes, DNA? Just tune in, feel into what's coming up around that, where the first original point began. And let me know if you there. Yeah. Okay. And just observing it. You don't have to go deeply into it. But I want you to just feel into, how can I dissolve this right now? Can I bring a certain color, a light, an energy, a vibration to neutralize this memory, experience? And really just trust your intuition. You might want to bring in a vibration of forgiveness or unconditional love, peace. You might want to work with color or a combination, bringing in a certain color, bringing that energy into that original point. And just dispersing, neutralizing. Yeah. Then what I want you to do is purify that energy cord. Start to move it back, all the way back, coming back into the present time, back into your body, bringing that different energy and vibration, bringing a piece of wholeness and completion back into this now moment. Just feel into that. You might just want to bathe yourself in light energy. Take a breath, and whenever you're ready, you can come back and open your eyes.
Very interesting. Thank you. Wow. Yeah.
That was just an impromptu. Most of my techniques
Yeah,
are pretty impromptu. There's a
yeah,
couple
that
of
really helped.
yeah, yeah.
Because I realized after going through that with you that whatever it was, it kind of felt like in a way that it was whatever energy there was something coming from elsewhere, and that basically it's kind of like it's like I had shut off this part. There was
Mm,
no, I mean, I could, like when as you were speaking that, and I was going back into that there was like my heart was almost like the only way I can say it in human language is that my heart was closed, and
yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
and what I realized was my the energy basically stopped at my throat chakra, and so I was speaking very frustrated, angry words, but from here down there was nothing. It was like it was trapped, and it's almost like I found myself like being able to exhale much more after you continued to speak. And what's weird is I saw, in terms of, I just kind of saw uh, energy I felt energy that just allowed me to kind of liberate that and just kind of do this really long exhale
Mm,
and to start to kind of breathe again and just for, things to kind of get back in balance. Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know where exactly it came from, but it did feel like it came from outside of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wonder if in some ways it's possible that it activated something, something here. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there again, I don't know that much about the energetic system in the body, but it felt like it activated. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of felt like nothing was going on here down. That it
So,
was just whatever, yeah, it just activated something from the throat chakra upwards.
mm-hmm.
Strange
Mm-hmm.
as that sounds. Yeah.
Nothing sounds strange to me. Everything. And then from
Yeah.
there, I could go, oh, well, it could have been a past experience where you were, disconnected from your heart, and then only, from your, throat upwards, very much in the analytics of it in your heart, and not being able to. And I think that's where a lot of people do get stuck, isn't it? That we can get so caught up in our head and fire this sort of sometimes vile words of
Yeah.
expression because we're severed from our heart.
Wow, that absolutely resonates. And I was going to tell you the weird thing was during this whole process, the one recurring thought kept coming through was what is happening to me? Why am I being this way? But then again, I realized that's the brain. I'm trying to think my way through it. What is going on? What is wrong with me? Why? I
Mm.
mean, I don't want to be this way. And yet here I am being this way. And I realized those thoughts really didn't help at all. If
Mhm.
anything, it just served to make me, to make me feel badly about myself, and feelings of guilt and shame and all those things just kind of reinforce that negative energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for going through that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for guiding me through. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again, Jeff. This has just been such a pleasure to sit down and chat with you and dissect your last week's experience and go
I
down
appreciate
rabbit
this. I really
holes.
do. Yeah.
And thank you so much everyone for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this and taken something from this. Um, all the links will be in the description box below, where you can follow along with Jeff's podcast and all the amazing work that he does there, and also links to different services that I offer if you feel that you need any additional support. And until next time, if you've enjoyed this, if you'd like us to delve in further, timelines is something that I can certainly speak extensively about. If you enjoyed the guided process, any sort of feedback around that, and we'll certainly come back next week with another episode of Synergistic Conversations. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, thank you so much, Alisha. This has been a wonderful exploration of this. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you so
Well,
much for everything you shared. It really has resonated. I really appreciate this.
you're
Yeah.
so welcome. So welcome. All right, everyone. Well, sending much love. Until next week. We'll see you then. Bye.